Everybody good?
Yep. We have to do all this before they can present.
Yes, that's correct. Okay, good evening, everyone. Thank you for coming. In accordance with the requirements of, let's take roll. Let's do that first.
Hello? Okay. Ms. Ross?
Here.
Ms. Allen?
Here.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Here.
Ms. Kenny?
Here.
Mr. Ryan?
Here.
Mr. Smith?
Here.
Ms. Weber?
Here.
Dr. Zhang?
Here.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Here.
9 present and accounted for.
Okay. In accordance with the requirements of the Open Public Meetings Act, Chapter 231, PL 1975 announcement, I wish to announce that the New Jersey Open Public Meetings Law was enacted to ensure the right of the public to have advance notice of and to attend the meetings of public bodies at which any business affecting their interests is discussed or acted upon. In accordance with the provisions of this act, the School District of the Chatham's Board of Education has caused notice of this meeting to be published by having the date, time, and place thereof posted in the Board Administrative Offices, sent to the clerks of the Chatham Borough and Chatham Township, the Library of the Chathams, the Chatham Courier, the Daily Record, the Star Ledger, and TAP. Oh, we already took roll. Here we are. We're a little off kilter. That's right. Please join us for the Pledge of Allegiance, if you are able, and the flag
To the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Okay, so I want to start by moving our reorganization action items. I'd like to move action items A1 to A16 on the regular agenda under the reorg action items.
I second that.
Okay.
Okay, any discussions for anybody on the board?
Agenda items pass A1 through 16. 9-0. You did vote.
Right.
I'm sorry.
We're going to vote on that.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Sorry.
All in favor?
Aye.
Any abstentions? No. Okay, perfect. Okay, and then I want to move agenda items B1 to B39.
I second that.
Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Agenda items B1 through 39, 9-0.
Okay, and then I would like to move agenda item C1.
I second that.
On the roll.
Any discussions? All in favor?
Aye.
Aye.
Agenda item C1, 9-0.
Okay, perfect. Thank you so much. I do not have any additional comments at this time. Maybe if you think we'll discuss in board business, but as of right now, nothing.
All right.
Dr. LaSousa?
Thank you, Ms. Ciccarelli. So first item under my report is a follow-up from the last meeting regarding the calendar for this school year. I mentioned last meeting that we still had 2 days to return to the calendar in accordance with the CBA agreements in the district, and those 2 days will be 5/23 and 5/24. Those are the 2 days before Memorial Day weekend. We did consider trying to close schools early and move up the final day at the end of the year, but that wasn't possible for a variety of reasons, and we looked at the week even after Memorial Day, but that wasn't as good either. So it's a Thursday and Friday before Memorial Day weekend. And then we've been discussing for a little bit of time in curriculum committee and other contexts our transition to full-day kindergarten next year and the benefits we think we might derive from having a kindergarten screening take place before this year is over. So I'm also proposing on the calendar that on May 30th, so that's the Thursday, I think, after Memorial Day, we have an early dismissal for K through 3 students only. And then those buildings, the K-3 buildings, would conduct their kindergarten screenings to try to develop class lists and assignments for next year. So that's under district calendar 23-24. And then I have draft calendars for the 25-26 school year. And what we usually do is you look them over. You can take them with you and take a look at them by the next board meeting, May 13th. And if they look okay, we can then go out to the parent community and get some input and feedback on which calendar they prefer. Or if you see something in here that you think warrants changing or the development of another alternative that isn't in front of you, then we can do that and discuss that as well. And then we can try to adopt a calendar at the last meeting of the school year, which is in June, for 25-26. The only difference in these calendars really is the number of days off around President's Day weekend. And these calendars all do include school closures on Diwali and Lunar New Year, which is the latter, which is the 17th of February. So I'll let you take a look at those. We can discuss them in board business if you want, or we can discuss them on May 13th. And then we have 2 presentations scheduled for tonight, and they involve 2 different principals. So I think the easiest thing to do is probably have all of the board members go into the seats and then have each principal present successively. And then once both of them are finished, you guys can all return to the stage and then ask them any questions if you have any about each of their reports. Thank you.
Good evening, board members and the Chatham community. My name is Cheryl Russo. I'm the principal of Lafayette School, and tonight I'm pleased to share with you the collaborative efforts of teachers and specialists from all the elementary schools in the district to prepare for the 2 transitions that are occurring at Lafayette in August 2024 and 2025. It was through brainstorming and collaboration that I'm able to present our ideas to you tonight. I believe that after tonight, you will see a parallel between our programs, making the shift to a 3-5 building and to a 3-4 building seamless. We started the year with our 2025 transition team meeting during various mornings and afternoons to openly discuss strengths and challenges that would come with this large of a transition and hosting students that are 1 year younger than our typical Lafayette students. Halfway through the year, Dr. LaSousa pulled together a second team where similar conversations occurred, pushing up our timeline. This first transition, which I will refer to as the grade 3 cohort, will allow us on a much smaller scale to practice what will work and will not work with the younger students coming into Lafayette. Our discussions centered around comparing our instructional schedule and programs, looking beyond instruction, the fun stuff, as the kids call it, arrival and dismissal procedures, our social emotional learning programs, PTO and Lafayette after-school clubs, and teacher and school materials necessary to ensure our students have the resources they need for a successful school year. Our conversations revolved around whether the continuation of the teaching team model would work for grade 3 students, especially at the beginning of the year. We considered the benefits and potential challenges for incoming grade 3 students. These mostly centered around their organization of materials, following the schedule, and making connections with teachers. One of the many agreed upon benefits would be the way the Lafayette schedule rotates, allowing for math and ELA classes to change from afternoon to morning on different letter days. We also looked closely at the effectiveness of a 6-day versus 5-day rotations in terms of minutes. We believe that overall our minutes for ELA and math are comparable, and there would be an increase in science and social studies minutes. All students at Lafayette would receive Spanish, which would be an added class for the grade 3 cohort. Academic programs such as Big Ideas and the ELA units of study and TCI for social studies were also reviewed and are also the programs used at the 4 or 5 level. It was important to parents and teachers that we continue to maintain the elementary traditions that are part of each school. While some of the activities have different names, we noticed during our discussions that most of our activities are very similar in their intention and provide different opportunities for parents and students to get involved. Lafayette is open to bringing some of the grade 3 traditions to Lafayette, as well as rethinking how to reframe some of the events so they are suitable for each grade level and/or the class moving up. What was determined was that these students would be the Lafayette students. We could not develop a program that lived in 2 spaces. The 3rd graders would attend field trip like their 3rd grade peers, but it would be the Lafayette trip to Jeff Lake. This is our beginning of the year trip to build community between students, teachers, counselors, and administration, which we thought would be a great way to welcome them to Lafayette. In the reconfiguration meetings, the 3rd grade teams were very concerned with the dismissal of students. Since Lafayette is not considered a neighborhood school, our dismissal is different from the K-3 schools. We have many walkers and bussers, like K-3. Our teachers, however, do not bring students outside to wait for parents all year long. Teachers support students in the first month or so to develop a routine. After this transition time, it is up to students and the bus and car line supervisors to keep dismissal running smoothly. As part of my 3rd grade cohort welcome newsletter, I asked parents for their input on dismissal. They shared some ideas and concerns that will be addressed before the school year begins. This includes, but is not limited to, a safe space for 3rd graders on the bus and supervisors in all dismissal areas. Based on the survey of the incoming grade 3 cohort, most students will be walking or taking the bus home. We will closely monitor and make changes to our dismissal as needed based on what we learn in 2024 to help with our transition in 2025. Our SEL programs are very comparable in themes and overall purpose, which is to build a community that supports and keeps all students safe physically and emotionally. Lafayette counselors and K-3 counselors teach lessons. We have SEL days and school-wide assemblies to build community through the school year. The grade 3 teachers and counselors will use the current Lafayette lessons and some of the second step program and analyze their effectiveness throughout the year as we plan for 2025. Our PTO after-school enrichment programs were very similar in how they are run, as well as the courses offered. Lafayette does host some school district of the Chatham clubs that are run by teachers, one of which will only be available to grades 4 and 5, such as the Broadcasting Club. Our other clubs, such as the Environmental Club and Playwriting and Stock Market Game, will be open to all students. Ongoing discussions about materials are centered right now with LMC specialists. We are analyzing reports from Follett to identify popular titles for the incoming 3rd graders. The plan is to retain all current titles in the Lafayette Library and incorporate new titles for grade 3 readers. As for the classrooms, all mentor text and book club books will accompany each grade level, while titles specific to Lafayette, such as the Book of the Month and multicultural books acquired over time, will stay at Lafayette. Teachers coming into Lafayette will relocate with their classroom materials and classroom libraries. Just like our K-3 schools, Lafayette also incorporates ways for students to give back to their community and surrounding communities. With the help of our parents and teachers, the students this year wrote letters of appreciation to community workers. They participated in food drives and bridges outreach. We are currently working with the PTO this week to create toiletry bags for the homeless. As next year approaches, we'll continue working with the PTO, a larger committee, to create community service projects that occur 3 times a year for each class. We're also proud of our Lafayette Cup, which is our school-wide competition where each class is awarded points when students show sportsmanship, acts of service in school and out of school. These points are awarded individually or as a group. As noted earlier, we want to give all the Lafayette students the same or similar experiences. Any student interested in being in chorus at Lafayette School can sign up in the spring or fall. In the area of band and orchestra, this presented us with a complex problem to solve, and it is not typical that students in 3rd grade start an instrument because of their size and the size of the instruments. Thanks to Ms. Gall and our supervisor, Ms. Spooner, we have been researching our options and were able to find smaller alternative instruments to help prepare students for the instruments they'll be playing in 4th grade. We have already sent out an interest survey to parents whose children might be interested in playing an instrument this fall. In the area of orchestra, all students will be able to choose violin as they come in different sizes, and then in the 4th grade they can choose different orchestra instruments. The incoming 3rd grade cohort will also have an opportunity to participate in the Applied Learning Program. The Applied Learning Program is finishing its 1st year at Lafayette. This class, just like Applied Music, will occur during the school day. The classes are not graded and are offered in the area of art, theater, library, and D&T. There will be a chance for parents to sign up in the spring and the fall. The Applied Music Program can accommodate all students who are interested. The Applied Learning Program may have to use a lottery system if the interest exceeds our class sizes. Those will run on, there'll be about 10 lessons per trimester. As I mentioned throughout the presentation, we have already sent parent surveys to families in the grade 3 cohort to address questions and concerns. Last Wednesday, Lafayette hosted a parent orientation for all incoming parents. We are also discussing bringing back certain activities that align with the 3rd grade, such as our t-shirt contest, birthday gifts from the office, and mystery readers. I will work closely with the Lafayette teachers and Lafayette PTO transition team to support and follow through on some of these ideas. We are now working with the 4th grade classroom teachers and students on our student orientations, which will take place throughout the month of May. The Lafayette Broadcast Club is in the midst of creating how-to at Lafayette videos, which will provide the students and parents with short videos that highlight routines at Lafayette. This will allow for a sneak peek into Lafayette, so it will look familiar when they come to school in August. Many hands make light work, and I believe that with our collective voices and collaboration, our 2 transitions will support all students and staff and families and continue to maintain what makes Lafayette such a special place to learn. Thank you for your time.
Good evening. I'm Doug Walker, the principal of Chatham High School, and tonight I have the pleasure of presenting the report of the graduates from the class of 2023. So the class of 2023 saw 95% of our students decide to attend four-year colleges or universities, and 2% just chose two-year, and 3% chose other. And as you can see, those percentages are fairly consistent going back the past 4 years and even prior to that. One of the other metrics that we look at from our graduating classes is the distribution of GPAs. And what you can see here from this graph is that the largest percentage of our students fall in the 3.0 to 3.99 percentage, with the second largest grouping being in the 4.0 to 4.49 percentage. One of the things that remains consistent over the years is that we find our students, regardless of where they fall in a GPA band, tend to have really great options when it comes to post-secondary. I took a snapshot here of just some of the schools that students who had a GPA below our 3.5 band had a chance to matriculate to. And these are schools that had a number of students from Chatham High School matriculate to, not just students in below a 3.5. But what it demonstrates is that the rigor and the programming at Chatham High School, it's pretty well known within the post-secondary community, and students, regardless of where they fall on that continuum, tend to have really great options when they leave here. One cohort that we take a look at each year is our special education population, and these would be students who graduated in the year 2023 with an active IEP. And of that population, 88.4% of those students moved on to four-year programs, four-year colleges. You had a 4.7% who went a two-year option, and then we have 6.9% who did other. And sometimes those others are, for some of those students, continuing within our 18 to 21-year-old program, or there's also some workplace training type situations that they're involved in. But overall, our numbers consistently each year have students above 80 percentile going to four-year schools or two-year, year after year. Here's a snapshot of some of the schools that our special education students matriculated to. These schools also have general ed students who matriculated as well, but each of these are some really fantastic options that were available to these students. Each year we look at where students are attending in terms of public and private institutions, and we've remained fairly consistent over the years with just under half of our students attending public and just over half attending private. Over the past few years, that number has been rather consistent. In terms of regions, we looked at this. This slide shows the last 4 years. These numbers also have been fairly consistent over the years with small bumps here and there, but a majority of our students attend colleges and universities on the East Coast. A little bit of a bump this year for New Jersey based, and the last couple years we've seen a little bit of a jump in the South and a little drop on the West Coast going into this year. But overall, the numbers really are fairly consistent from year to year, with the majority of our students staying on the East Coast of the U.S. So this slide breaks down some of the application data that we processed. So last year, there was 3,058 applications amongst the senior class. Out of those 3,058 applications, there were 1,442 acceptances. That was a mean of about a 47% acceptance rate for that class, and they averaged about 9.1 applications per student. We had 162 early decision applications last year. Early decision is the binding agreement. That means when you apply to the school, early decision, you are committed if you're accepted to go there, and you're expected to withdraw all of your applications once you receive that acceptance. We had a 46% acceptance rate of those 162. Early action, we had a larger number, 1,403. That's just an early action has an earlier deadline, and you'll find out a little sooner than general applications if you got accepted, and we had a 55% acceptance ratio there. One thing I did want to point out is we work year after year to help students really focus their list, focus on schools that they really would be willing to go to, that they spend time investigating, and really narrow that list. And we did see a little bit of a drop this year in terms of number of applications, where last year the average number of applications for students was 11.1. This year the average was 9.1, and that resulted in improved acceptance. So there was 47% acceptance rate this year with an average of 9.1 applications in comparison to last year, which had 11.1 and a 41% acceptance rate. This slide puts that a little bit more into context, and here are, in the first column, the number of applications. So our first column, you can see the first row. These would be students who applied to 20 or more colleges. That represented 4% of our senior class, or 14 students, and there was a 35% acceptance rate there. You can see as the numbers go down in terms of the number of schools you're applying to, the acceptance rate increases. So applying to more schools doesn't necessarily get you more options. Having a more focused list that you've spent time in, that you're vested in the process, tends to give you much better outcomes. This slide shows some historical data going back 10 years from the class of 2023. You can see from, in the first column, the GPA, the average GPAs over each of the years, the SAT scores, the average ACT scores, the number of applications, and the acceptance rates, and just sort of gives a snapshot of sort of where we were and kind of where we've been trending to. I think what stands out on the applications, as I mentioned before, if you look at 2013-17, smaller number of applications, higher acceptance rate. As we've trended up in applications, the acceptance rate has taken a little bit of a bump. You can see that our GPAs have increased over these years, as well as our SAT scores. It's important to notice that in the early years of this chart, there was a change to the SAT at that time, so that resulted in some changes to SAT scoring. And our ACT scores have been fairly consistent over the years. Here are the most attended schools of the class of 2023. So Rutgers and University of Delaware had tied for the most matriculations of our students from the class of 2023. And then a multi-way tie with 6 students attending towards the bottom of this chart. This chart identifies the 10 colleges or universities that had the most applications from the class of 2023. So Rutgers, New Brunswick topped the chart, that had 74 applications to it, and down to number 10, which was Clemson at 47. So these are the schools that the most students in Chatham High School are applying to. I think this is a good reference point for students in the class of future classes to look at this chart. It gives you an idea on the schools that Chatham students are applying to, and the competition that exists not just around the nation but also within the high school. And you can also see here how many students from the applications were accepted and who actually attended, number of students that actually attended those schools. This chart is, again, another reference point, something for students to take a look at when they're applying to schools. This expands that list, and it's the colleges that had 20 or more applications in last school year for last year's graduating class. So here you can get a chance to look at each of these schools and see how many students from that class applied there, and recognize that these would be schools where a large number of Chatham High School students are applying if you decide to apply there. Our last slide here is matriculation for the class of 2023. These 2 slides, again, more of a reference point, but it lists all of the universities that the students in the class of 2023 matriculated to and how many students in that class are attending there. So again, this document is really more of a point of reference, but there are 2 slides that cover it. And I'll cap off our presentation with just an overview of our continued college and career and counseling events. We continue with our college rep visits every year. This year, we totaled 156 total visits. 156 admissions reps visited Chatham High School. 140 of those were in person. The remaining 16 were virtual. Some of the more popular visits amongst our students that had the largest attendance are listed in that gray box on the right. And we also continue with our programming. A lot of this is organized by Caitlin Slate, our college and career counselor, as well as our counselors in the counseling department. But in the early September, and as every year in early September, and we will again this year, we have our senior college planning night, where we talk about the application process and the Common App and Naviance and everything that goes into starting those college applications. So that'll happens in usually very end of August, early September, right when school starts, just prior to starting senior conferences with the counselor. We also hosted a college funding night, and this is financing college education. So this is merit money as well as financial aid. This year we had a speaker, the head of financial aid from Monmouth University, who presented on the tips and tricks and what you need to know about funding college and financial aid. We continue to have our Alumni Return Day, which happens right before the holiday break in December, where we invite back graduates from the prior year to sit on a panel in our auditorium, and we invite our seniors in, and we do a moderated discussion for those graduates from the prior year to share words of wisdom, things they've learned, advice for our graduating seniors this year to prepare for post-secondary life. We also continue our Life After CHS Junior Planning Night, so that is a presentation for junior parents and families to start talking about the post-secondary planning process that happens before our junior conferences. We had a spring college presentation this year where we had a speaker who is an admissions director for the University of Miami, who did a presentation for our families and students to give some insight into what's happening in applications and trends. And we also continue to support post-secondary planning and transition with our special needs population and our learning skills classes, and our Kate Slate has done some parent presentations on this topic as well. This year we had a military and law enforcement open house. We had the Army, Air Force, Coast Guard, Marines, and Navy, and New Jersey National Guard, the New Jersey State Police, and Department of Corrections. We did sort of a fair in our library during lunch. Each of them set up a table and students were able to visit to learn about opportunities in each of these branches. Mrs. Slade also hosted an alternative college entry week where we had representatives from the schools listed, the county colleges and vocational programs come to talk to students about options that exist there. And lastly, we continue our standardized testing offerings. We offered the PSAT 11 in October, the pre-ACT for 10th graders in November, the PSAT 10 just recently in April, and we also offered an on-site ACT and SAT here at the high school. And that would be the end of our presentation, and I'm happy to answer any questions that you have. Thank you. Because I was like this, I had to go like that. Oh, that's why. Oh. I'm sorry, I thought it was up there.
Thank you both for clear and succinct and informational presentations. Just a couple of words. I know all of you are familiar with Dr. Walker and his annual presentation, and I think it gets a little more crisp and clear every year. so you can ask your questions as you see fit. I just want to mention Cheryl Russo here. I think it was in October, it was around Halloween, where I had an idea that I ran by Mary quickly before I walked down to Lafayette and asked Cheryl to sit down because I was wondering if it might be a decent idea to bring a group of third graders over to Lafayette a year ahead of time. And she thought about it and said, I think that could work. And from that day, honestly, until the present day, she has spearheaded the effort. She has been more proactive in reaching out to the teachers involved than I have been. We had a meeting just last week, Dr. Donahue and I, and Cheryl and the three teachers who were coming over, and it was just so beautiful to watch the interactions. We brought the teachers into their classrooms that they'll have next year. I felt like I was walking around with Taylor Swift because the kids would ooh and awe when they saw their third grade teachers that they hadn't seen in a long time, and they would run up and hug them. And the Lafayette teachers whose classrooms we were in were equally as welcoming, and it was just a very invigorating and warm kind of experience. So I really want to thank Ms. Russo. She's been ahead of the game, thought about things that we wouldn't have thought about, and I think that she's just done a tremendous job of welcoming these 66 students who are heading over to her school next year, a year earlier than we thought they might. So you can certainly ask her about that process or about the 2025 target. I know she spoke to it quite well in the presentation, but I just want to really thank her, as well as the teachers who volunteered, and of course also thank Dr. Walker and his team for everything that they do around the whole graduation and college and post-secondary efforts. But it's all yours for questions.
Can you hear me? I have a question for Dr. Walker. There was a slide called sample matriculation, and there was a piece, 8.2% on the employment and maybe a gap year, I think, if I saw it from my seat correctly. I'm just wondering how that compared to prior year, just given all the news, you know, how much school is costing and some people opting to defer a year. And so if you had any insight as if that has changed dramatically from the prior years.
Yeah, so it was about, that was in the category of other. I would say there's been a small increase in students choosing those options, but nothing too dramatic. So we are seeing, you know, a few more gap years. There's definitely some students that are pursuing employment, vocational type areas. But I wouldn't say it's been I haven't seen a major shift in that. Yeah.
I have a question for Nick. I'm sorry, Nick, if you could turn my mic on. Cheryl, just a couple questions or items. Did you mention at the beginning of your presentation that there'll be a little bit more unstructured time, you know, recess for the third graders? Or if you didn't, could you comment on that?
So we would run the same lunch recess, and I mean, even at Lafayette now with the 4th and 5th graders, teachers take the kids outside for breaks often. I think with the additional time for science and social studies, we could probably fit in more extra recess. But we didn't really take into account any differences because our schedule's kind of flexible in that way. If we see in like a triple block the kids need it, we take the kids outside. So no, but our lunch recess would be similar to what they do at the K-3s.
Okay.
That's funny, because that topic lunch did not come up, actually.
Can I jump in for 1 second?
Yeah, 'cause
There's many iterations of transitions taking place, so Jill, you might be thinking of the previous presentation specific to the K2s,
Yeah.
where we did talk about that.
Okay.
That when we do finally get to a K2 model, that is something that we're trying to get to with a longer lunch period so that students are not eating with such a time crunch, and then equally a little bit more time when they go out to recess. So you're not imagining it, you did hear it, just for the K2s.
Okay, and I did remember you mentioning that, and I wasn't sure if it kind of applied to the third graders, but I hear your answer, Cheryl, so thank you. I'm good there.
I will say, though, when we have delayed openings, our kids get more time to eat in the cafeteria, and it gets pretty, like, they actually don't know what to do with the time. It gets super loud, they don't know what to do with themselves, and they just want to go outside.
Got it.
So they actually have like 28 minutes instead of like the 20, and that extra 8 minutes is loud and a little chaotic.
Okay, and then my last question or point was, you had mentioned that this year you get to pilot a few things and, lessons learned, make some changes as needed, for next year when the whole cohort comes up. But you're not going to wait until next year. I mean, you're going to be agile enough to say, you know what, this isn't working, we're going to switch and...
Oh, yeah.
Okay.
Absolutely.
So you're not waiting a whole year. You just said, oh, we'll apply it the next year, but I'm sure you'll be agile and, as things unfold, you'll change it as you go.
Right, and I have like 3, veteran grade 3 teachers coming up that we feel comfortable bouncing ideas off of each other already, and I have no doubt that they would share their concerns, and that's what our meetings were all about. Like, I would come with an idea, they would say it wouldn't work, so as Dr. LaSouza said, I'm totally fine with change. You always have to be concerned when he comes down and closes the door with a giant smile, though.
Perfect, thank you. Dr. Walker, a quick question on the military and law enforcement presentation. How do you choose who you invited? Like, I'm curious why some of our municipal folks weren't there, the county level, some cool personnel in a SWAT team, uniform. So I was just curious, how do you decide who comes to that?
We actually put out more invitations than actually who participated. So our local police department actually wasn't able to attend. They canceled on us on that day.
Got it, okay.
And so there was, sorry, there was a number of that were invited, but it was, we did have the Morris County Sheriff's Office there, but we didn't have, we had the, was it the Morris County Sheriff's Office or the?
You had the corrections?
Corrections officers there, sorry.
Okay.
Yeah, but we did invite a number. It was spearheaded by one of our counselors who actually kind of brought this to the table. And we get a lot of the military organizations that want to come in and set up tables during lunch and, kind of here and there. And what we sort of decided to do was let's make sort of a career fair with it. And so we invited all of them, and then those that were able to come came. If I remember correctly, I think Navy canceled on us at the day of as well.
Okay, got it. Oh, yeah, I was just curious. I think we have an in with one of our staff members for Sheriff Gannon. Maybe we can strong-arm him to get some folks in here.
We had some good attendance at it.
Okay, that's fantastic. I also, sometimes in past presentations you've mentioned, and I think it's important, you listed where the kids decided to go, but that's not necessarily, the highest level school that they got into. A lot of times they choose the money over the, they got into Yale, Princeton, they got into all the Ivies, but they chose a different institution because of the scholarship money.
Yeah, and I've been back and forth in terms of what to present. So in the past, like if you look at our program, our school profile, I will list the acceptances from the class in each college and how many acceptances. And then this year I've mixed it with matriculation. I think they both can be misleading because when you have a number of, let's say, very highly competitive schools that have acceptances, that could be one student that got accepted into many of those, where matriculation really shows you the picture of like where kids went. So I've been starting to present both sets of data.
Got it.
So I put in this report matriculation, and in the school profile I put acceptances.
Got it. And lastly, do you have an opinion on the standardized testing? At one point, the schools were going away from standardized testing. There seems to be a lot of buzz in the news that a lot of schools are going back. Do you have any comment or thought on that?
Yeah, there's a lot of talk about it. I've chatted with the counselors about it to kind of get a buzz for it. We're starting to see more and more schools bring it back for certain. One of the things, that even when it was for test optional schools, we've always advised students, you can still take the assessments and see how you land. And if your standardized test score represents you well in comparison to your GPA and the other aspects of your application, then you should send it because it's another metric to differentiate you from others. But if we didn't feel like it represented you well, maybe don't send it. Now, for some of these schools, you don't really have a choice. You're going to have to bring it back. And I think that universities are just having a really hard time differentiating between students without having that metric. GPAs and transcripts are a big measure, but GPAs are apples and oranges when you compare them between two different schools, and everyone uses different point measures and metrics and such. The rigor of your courses, the growth and rigor of your courses still matter. as well as the activities you're involved in. And it's not necessarily the long laundry list of activities. It's a very defined list of things that you show sustainability with and passion for that really stand out. That's the feedback that we get from the admission reps when they come. So I think looking at those components are just as important. Standardized testing, I think, is going to make its way back a bit. We did offer the SAT this year for the first time, which was in a digital format now. The feedback has been fairly positive from most of the students that I've spoken to. It's a shorter test. It's only 2.5 hours now, and it seemed to go fairly well. I get the impression that because it's digital and they're building these question banks, they're starting to give us more flexibility on when it can be offered instead of only on very specific days. And again, I'm just using my crystal ball here, but I'm starting to feel like that model, because they have these depth of question banks, you might start to find more opportunities to take the SAT, maybe at different locations down the road, like you would take a graduate school entrance exam at an educational testing service. So I'm hoping that's the direction it goes, because they're able to not worry so much that everybody's taking the test at the same time on the same day, because they have these pools of questions. So it might become a little more accessible to take it more times.
Sorry, meaning you could just run your own test with Chatham students on a Thursday?
Right, so this year we did our own. So what had happened was when they went to the digital format, they required every student to be on a computer, to use their app that they make you test through. And if you offer it on a Saturday like we always have, they won't allow us to limit it to only Chatham students on a Saturday. You have to be a public testing center, meaning anybody who registers can come. And every time we've ever hosted on a Saturday, we've gotten a number of students, probably 50% of the students who came to Chatham High School were not from Chatham High School. They were from various parts of New Jersey, New York, sometimes Connecticut would come down here to take tests. And the only way that they would, so we couldn't do that because our technology, our cyber insurance doesn't allow outside devices to access our Wi-Fi network for legitimate reasons. So the only way for us to be able to host the SAT for only our students was to do a school day administration. So we didn't do a Saturday, we did a school day, but they gave me a window of time to pick to be able to host it that day. Not like in the past where it's been the SAT must be on this day at this time, everybody sits. And so we did do that, and we tested a large number of students in the junior class who decided to register for it. And I thought it was a fairly successful administration.
Great, thank you, Dr. Walker.
Dr. Walker, I noticed one of the slides was 95% of the kids go off to a 4-year school, 2% to a 2-year school, 3% other. Are they going to armed forces? Are they going to police academies? Or are they going to a trade school post, having been at a county trade, a county trade school, like a vocational school? And how many kids do go to vocational school from our schools? Is it 10th, 11th grade, or is it just 11th and 12th grade? 11th
and 12th grade.
Right.
And we have, between Morris County VOTEC, and then we have a partnership with, they have a partnership where they have some of their programs at County College of Morris.
Okay.
So we have some kids who do a half a day at Morris County VOTEC, or some kids who do half a day at County College of Morris, depending upon the program that they're in. It's under 10 students on any given year that are in those programs. I want to say this past, in this class, it might have been 5 or 6, but off the top of my head, I don't remember. But we have an electrician, automotive, culinary, that's at CCM. Right. There is a technology, like cybersecurity program that's available at CCM as well.
How do they find that? How do they, do they ask questions when they're in 9th or 10th grade to get there, or would they just, I don't know, are they pushed there somehow or in some way, shape, or form, or how does that work out?
So it's a kind of a combination. So when they're having like the open houses and things like that, we do advertise that to the kids internally. It comes usually because Kate Slate, if you notice, when she does her presentations, it's not like a college planning presentation. It's post-secondary options, and she talks about all these options. And so she always goes into all of her presentations, what she sends out, thinking about all options, not just four-year college. Right. And then a lot of times, though, what happens with some students is the counselors will identify students from working with them, because they meet with them from 9th grade, 10th grade, where they think that this might be a good fit just based on dialogue, interest they've shown, and they'll try to guide them towards taking a look at it as well, targeting certain students. So it's kind of through those two pathways that we're able to do it. I would say, majority of the other, it really is kind of a mix. So we do have some students, like I said before, that are in our special education program who are continuing on to 18 to 21, so those students are part of that other. We do have definitely students continuing in their trades that graduated from those programs, or others just entering trade programs that were never in VOTEC, but
Right.
just going that route.
Okay.
We have a few military each year. I mean, each year we have a number of service academy appointments, but in terms of enlisting in military, here and there, but not a large number.
Okay, thank you.
Dr. Walker, you mentioned, you showed the GPA distribution slide, which really shows us a school of very high achievers. I'm curious as to your thoughts and insights onto this, into our GPA distribution. Is there grade inflation? You mentioned also in your remarks that you really can't standardize. GPAs differ very much from school to school. So where's Chatham High School in the range of how we think about GPAs? And looking at that, like I always thought a 3.75 was a good GPA, but it seems to be really average in our high school.
So great questions. So a couple parts to that. So in Chatham High School, we have our GPA is based on your grades in your courses, and it's if you take a weighted course in honors or an AP, that it accelerates the weight of the course a bit. So one of the reasons we've definitely seen an increase in GPAs going over 10 years. That's not only a Chatham High School thing. Most of the schools and most of my colleagues, there's been a level of increasing grade inflation happening over the past number of years. There was a lot of it coming out of COVID, for sure, but over time. So a combination of things. Number one is, I think when you see a change in GPAs going back from 2013 to going to now, there also has been more options for weighted courses. Like we've added more options for kids. There's been more AP courses added to our program of studies. Some of our electives had in the sequences, we've added like capstone honors courses. So there's been a few more places in order to bring that GPA boost. There's no question that there's some level of grade inflation that's happening. There's a combination of factors related to that, but it is something that we constantly try to look at and try to temper a bit, trying to, it's that focus on achievement versus learning, right? There's a focus to want to achieve and whatever it takes to get that grade, but we also want to make sure that what's most important is the learning, and there is definitely some struggle with learning. The tolerance for that struggle is what's been challenging to work on. So as teachers and as administrators, we are trying to find opportunities for students to challenge themselves more appropriately and manage that struggle and look at how we're raising grades in general. When you talk about comparing Chatham High School to other schools, it's difficult to compare two schools when they have completely different GPA bands. When I have looked extensively at peer districts around, and we're not far off. There might be subtle differences in percentage points here and there, but our band is fairly the same. What universities tend to look at is really where you stand decile-wise amongst your school. So on our school profile, which goes out with all college applications, we give the GPA bands and what percentage of students fall in each of those. And that's where they can kind of see where a student falls amongst their peers. And that's really where the ranking of GPA comes versus a GPA at Chatham High School and a GPA at Summit High School. It's a little bit harder because there could be different formulas that compute that. So I hope I answered your question. There's sort of a lot of factors there.
Sure. Yep. Thank you.
Yeah, I'll just add, that was a terrific answer from Dr. Walker, of course. Our grades definitely have risen over time, and that's a national issue. That's one of the reasons why so many colleges and universities are beginning to bring back standardized tests, because once upon a time, the best predictor of performance in college was performance in the high school level and the kinds of grades and GPA that students left high school with. But what's happened everywhere is that grades have risen, and so that no longer is a differentiator, and standardized test scores are now, in the eyes of many, a better predictor than GPA, even though it didn't used to be that way. I'd also offer that students are more compliant now than they were before. So in terms of homework completion, in terms of behavior in class, students today are much more compliant than they were 20 or 30 years ago. If you Google this kind of thing, you'll find teacher testimonials about not wanting to confront with parents who are relentless about their children's grades and pressing the teachers all the time for extra points or for a retake, or my son or daughter didn't deserve that grade that you assigned him or her. So there is some of that that has occurred across the board. And I think, like Dr. Walker said, there is always this question that we struggle with regarding mastery versus sorting, or learning versus ranking. So there are probably some individuals on this stage that had to take the Series 7 to, earn a certain credential in finance. If I asked you, well, how many times did you take the Series 7? If you had to take it 2 times or 3, it didn't really matter. If you passed, if you demonstrated mastery, you got your credential. If someone takes a driver's test more than once, it doesn't matter at the end of the day, right? They've demonstrated their ability to drive a vehicle, they get the license, and it doesn't matter if they took it 1 time or 3. 3 years down the road, everyone's got the driver's license. So if an educator is concerned about a student mastering the content that's being delivered, it's appropriate usually to give that student more than 1 opportunity. If the student strikes out the first time, you don't stick a 50 in front of the student and say, you can never improve. I don't care if you learn that material, we're just going to go on. You want that student to actually invest in taking stock of the 50, figuring out what she or he didn't understand very well, and then attaining mastery so that they actually can learn the content, so they can build upon that content and then learn more. If you do that, you're giving kids more than 1 opportunity, of course, to demonstrate their learning, and that usually will elevate grades in some way. So there's a whole host of factors. It's something that we discuss as a team. We look at that data over time, and our grades certainly have gone up. But it's not a simple, easy problem to solve, if you will. And like Dr. Walker said, the GPA alone, that has a lot to do with weighting. Every high school weights their courses differently. What the colleges look at is the strength of your program relative to what your high school offers, and then the bands typically in decile form of where a student falls in relation to other students in their class.
I would like to just add one more piece to that. One thing that I think has been incredibly consistent when we look at students' success through high school, we look at their grades, the content knowledge that they mastered. But I think what really stands out are the skills. So regardless of the grades and regardless of where they land in terms of the honors class or the college prep class, what I find consistently across the board is the skills that they're developing, thanks to our teachers, is what resonates with them when they leave. And the number one theme across all alumni when we have alumni return day, or I speak to alumni when they come back, every year they make the comment of how well prepared they are for the schools they're at compared to their peers that are there, or the feedback they're getting from their professors on their writing and their skills. So one thing we can definitely hang our hat on is that when they leave us, whether they're at a 3.2 GPA or a 4.5, they're leaving here with the skills that are translating to success where they go. And I still see that persisting. So we are, that's something that we're definitely proud of.
Any other questions for Dr. Walker or Ms. Russo?
Thank you both.
Thank you both. Yes, that were amazing presentations. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Dr. LaSusa, that's it for you?
That is it for me.
Okay, perfect. Business administrators report?
The school bus evacuation drills were completed in October and April. The bids for the vestibules will be open on May 8th, and the summer project maintenance work that are being planned and scheduled with a completion date of by the new school year. That's all I have.
Patricia, how many bids did you get, or you don't know?
It's going to open May 8th.
I know, so you have no idea how many?
No, yeah.
Got it. It could be 0, it could be 100.
Right.
Got it.
Yeah, and the plan is to open on May 8th, have our architects/attorneys vet the winning bid, and then award on May 13th.
Okay. Anybody have any questions Perfect. Our student liaison, Ahana.
So with CHS right now, on the topic of standardized testing, we've had a lot of testing going on. So recently, our juniors completed the NJGPA and the SAT that we offered for just our school, as Dr. Walker was talking about. And our sophomores also completed the PSAT. And then this week, I think starting tomorrow, freshmen are taking the NJSLA for English and math, but CHS is going to run a regular bell schedule while freshmen are testing. And then also this week, our 8th graders are going to be visiting the high school for a tour from our Links leaders, and they're going to get a presentation from the administration. And that same presentation will be available to 8th grade parents on Wednesday night at 6:30 p.m. in the auditorium here. And then we have a couple of shout outs. So we want to congratulate our robotics team who placed second in their state final competition. We had our senior versus faculty volleyball game off late, which was a huge success as always. And let's see. Seniors won 2 out of 3 games, but the teachers won the last round. But overall, seniors, not a surprise. And then last month we celebrated Choose to Include Week, so our Played Unified Club hosted some spirit themes and lunchtime activities throughout the week. And then looking ahead, AP exams start next Monday, and they're going to be administered for the next 2 weeks. So after AP exams are over, we have senior internship beginning for the last 4 weeks of the school. So we're having 150 seniors leave to participate in senior internship. And that is all. Yeah, I guess I can mention the play one last time. Our musical was last month. I wasn't here for the last meeting where you guys could tell me all about how much you loved it. But yeah, we had a really great response, not just from Chatham, but from neighboring towns. We had a really great response to our musical.
It was sold out.
Yep.
And it was amazing. And Ahana's solo was even more amazing.
And she was singing it from way up top on a board that was about this wide.
Yep.
Yeah, good stuff.
Well done.
Okay,
All right.
thank you so much. Okay, perfect. Moving on to our committee reports. Personnel, Ms. Weber.
Oh, yes. Very good. Thank you, Ann. We met on March 20th, and we discussed the staffing needs for 2025. As you can imagine, this is a very busy time for the HR team because there's a lot of movement, retirements, folks moving on to other districts. So, Beth and her team are starting to look at the staffing needs and then, interviewing, which is pretty much going to go through the summer. So that was the topic that we discussed most. A couple other confidential personnel items, but that was the gist of the meeting.
And you're meeting again
Don't know.
May 22nd.
May 22nd.
Yes,
Thank you.
you're welcome. Any questions for personnel? Ms. Weber? Okey-doke. Curriculum?
Great. So the curriculum committee met twice since the last board meeting. The first meeting was on the 20th, where we were able to view both of the presentations that were given tonight, first by Cheryl Russo for the Lafayette reconfiguration, and then the graduation report given by Dr. Walker. Last week, we met on the 24th, and we were able to listen to the middle school reconfiguration presented by the principal, Mr. Orsini, and assistant principal, Mrs. Dagunas, and that presentation will be discussed at our next board meeting here on May 13th. And then the following curriculum committee will also be on Wednesday, May 22nd.
Okay, perfect. Thank you. Finance and Facilities, Mr. Smith?
Finance and Facilities have not met since our last meeting. We're meeting on May the 8th.
Perfect. Thank you. And Policy and Planning, Mr. Ryan?
Policy met on the 12th. We discussed a couple of issues related to the incoming class of all the kindergarten students and some appeals for tuition relief related to that. That was it.
Okay. Perfect. Any liaison reports?
Yes, I have one for CEF. A few of us were lucky enough to attend the 30th anniversary celebration Saturday night, which was fabulous. We had a great time, and I'm sure it was a wonderful success. And then there were two grants, they're mentioned in the agenda. The first is for about $8,100 for supporting learners in the non-traditional settings awarded to Milton Avenue School. It will provide students in the resource room and BSI classrooms with various seating options and writing support devices. And then there is a partial funding of $1,500 for a Gaga pit and 9 square in the air equipment for the high school, which I did not expect that, but yes, it's for the high school. And it's just to provide more physical education for students in grades 9 through 12. And the good thing is that it can be used both inside and outside, so it will allow for year-round use. And that's it.
Square in the air.
Yep.
Okay. Do we know what that is? Square in the air?
I don't know.
You ever played? Do you?
No.
You don't know? All right. We'll get to that for the next meeting.
So from the Chatham Borough, I just want to mention that Councilman Strickland, Dr. LaSousa and I met right before this meeting. Councilman Strickland's actually in the audience right there in the center in the Yankees jacket. Again, this is a monthly meeting, and it's a cadence that we're trying to keep up, to keep the lines of communication open, to, continue to improve the relationship. Again, most of the interaction with the municipalities is security, right? It's safety of the school and the class 3s, and, any incident that happens, we have to rely on our police officers and the municipality. So we want to just keep those lines of communication open as Dr. LaSousa and his staff need, additional security or an event's going on. So I just want to thank Justin for making the time to meet with us each month to keep those lines of communication open. Again, safety is our #1 topic.
And I'll just add that I did meet with Mr. Choi last month, too, from the township as the liaison to the school district, and appreciate his reaching out to me and cultivating that relationship as well.
Awesome. All good stuff. Anybody else? Rec? Nothing? Nope. Okay, good. So I'd like to move the minutes from the March 18th public and executive sessions and the March 27th executive session only.
Second?
The regular and executive session, 3:18, Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Regular and executive minutes pass 9-0. For the executive session on 3:27, Mr. Del Sandro and Mr. Smith were not present, so you'll abstain. Okay. Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Executive items for 3:27 pass 7-0-2.
Perfect. Thank you so much. Okay, so coming up is our first opportunity for public commentary. Hearing of the citizens during the public commentary section of the agenda is an opportunity for any member of the public to be heard about issues which are or are not topics scheduled for the current meeting. To help facilitate an orderly meeting and to permit all to be heard, speakers will be asked to limit their comments to a reasonable length of time. And when you do go up to speak, if you wouldn't mind just signing in and stating your name.
Evening, Bill Heap, Chatham Borough. I have commented on this before, but I think it bears repeating. I'm glad to see that the number of applications is trending down from 11 to 9. It is still the case, however, that nearly half the school kids are applying to 10 or more schools. Let me give you an example of a real-world situation. The JCs met and gave out the scholarship this past week. And we had several applications where students applied in one case, and these are anonymous applications. We don't know who they are, so I'm not calling out anyone. But there was an application with 30 applications to colleges. We asked them to state where they're applying. A couple of more with 20 applications. And I can tell you that they almost immediately went into circular filing because it showed us a complete lack of focus on their part. How can anybody possibly consider 30 colleges? We're not impressed that you applied to every Ivy League school in the country. So they did themselves in by doing something like that, and that should be noted. I know that most of this, or a lot of this, is parent-driven, but I do think that as far as the school counselors are concerned, they really should stress quality over quantity. My own personal feeling as an alumni interviewer for 35 years, if you can't get it done in a half a dozen applications or less, you're not going to get it done. You're wasting a lot of time. I would also like to comment that I'm sure that you have noticed, along with everybody else, the rise in college consultants. They have certainly it's been apparent on our applications over the years. I've been doing this for the past 30 years, and kids have become very cagey about their answers. They've become masters of deflection. It's tough to get a straight answer. If you ask them for a weather report in Chatham, they will tell you it's raining in Miami, which doesn't do us any good. It would be nice if we got some straightforward answers, but again, that reflects the rise of these college consultants. There seem to be, at this point, no more stay-at-home moms. Moms or mothers are all unemployed, and I guess that's an attempt to evoke some sympathy for their financial situation. But we have noticed that trend over the years, and I'm just glad to see that at least the applications are headed in the right direction and down. Thanks.
Libby Hills and Rath, Chatham Borough. I just wanted to comment on Bill Heap's suggestions from the last meeting, and this is based on the 3% budget increase that we're looking at for next year. He requested and thought it would be a good idea to do a presentation on our special needs situation, both in Chatham and I guess statewide. And I'm writing from the meeting, he said, you know, there may be certain special needs people who might want to weigh in, just to let the public know what you guys might know that we don't. He also brought up, and I'd like to thank him for doing so, and agree that we've just raised taxes 4.5%, now we're raising them again 3%, where we're painting a bleak picture of the budget. We're hitting bone, it's bad math, but yet we're taking the full-day kindergarten paid tuition from $7,000 to $5,000 and giving up a revenue stream. So I don't know how that is a fiscally responsible position to take. I also wanted to bring up, I don't know where we are with the Harding schools. First of all, how that came up. I didn't hear how it came up. I don't know where we are with that. Did they approach us? Why are they leaving Madison? I think they've been there a while. And also the idea of moving the vote from November to April. For people who weren't around back in the 2015 referendum, I'm going to take a page from the Board of Education's book and fill people in who might not be aware. But after the 2015 referendum was defeated, soon after that, the board chose to move the vote from April to November, thereby taking the ability of the public, taking the vote away from the public. We couldn't vote the budget up or down. But what that also did is limit the board to a 2% cap. Now that might be changing per the governor, but one of the reasons at the time that was given to move the vote from April to November is that there's a cost associated with opening up the polls in November. And I think Mr. Tequila said at the last meeting, one of the last meetings, that cost is around $15,000 to $20,000. So back in 2015, when it was a good reason to move the vote to November to save that money, now that money doesn't matter. So it's, again, like, you can't have it both ways. Thank you.
Something else? One comment? Okay, so we'll close the first public comment section. There will be another section after we get through the rest of the regular agenda. So moving on to the action items. Personnel?
Personnel, very good. Thank you, Ann. I would like to move action items 1 through 32 on the regular agenda. There's an addendum with items 4, 16, and 21, and I believe we have an audible from Ms. Grant on number 6. I'll get a second, Beth, and then we'll go to discussion.
I'll second.
On Resolution A6, we're changing the classification of one of our middle school secretaries from 10-month to 12-month, so different from the attachments that were presented to the board on Friday. The new salary remains step 12, but the dollar amount changes to 48890. And this is effective July 1.
Effective July 1.
Okay, great. Thank you, Beth.
Okay, perfect.
I also just want to mention one quick thing regarding the reappointment lists for school year 24-25, which is this was the major reappointment of all of our staff. We now will work to translate those lists into the formal contracts, and so upon doing that, we often find that adjustments need to be made. So it is likely that in the May or on the May agenda, you'll see an amendment to these lists just with corrections.
Okay, perfect.
It's the most Beth talked in 13 years.
I know. Who knew?
Okay, very good. So 1 through 32, 4, 16, 21, and the audible of 6.
Okay. So yeah, A1 through 32, addendum 4, 16, 21, and the audible. A6, Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
And Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Agenda items, addenda items, and audible items pass 9-0.
Excellent, thank you. Curriculum is next? No.
No.
Who's next? Finance.
I would like to move agenda items B1 to B32 to a vote. We've got a number of donations in addition to the one Ms. Ross highlighted from the CEF. We've got a donation from the Chatham Performing Arts Booster to use towards the transportation to the music festival. We've got a donation from the Milton Avenue School PTO, a donation from Morgan Stanley for Lafayette, a donation from Miss Allison Moore on behalf of Stanley, a donation from JAG Physical Therapy, a donation for the Lafayette School Drama, a donation from Paul and Julia Sands for after-school enrichment, and finally, Shashwat Chakraborty, a Chatham High School student, is doing their Eagle Scout project at Southern Boulevard School to install a renewable energy learning station with informative signs and interactive stations. So thank you for all of those.
Thank you to all of them, and especially the Milton Avenue School PTO. As you know, all of our preschool students currently are housed at Milton, and this very generous donation from the PTO will help us provide even better equipment for some of our youngest and smallest and wiggling around learners.
That's quite a donation.
I'll second it.
Thank you.
Perfect.
Thanks,
Thank
Sue.
you.
Agenda items B1 through 32, Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Okay, moving on to curriculum.
Yep, I'd like to move curriculum agenda items C1 through C5.
Okay, agenda items C1 through 5, Ms. Ross?
Yes.
Ms. Allen?
Yes.
Mr. Del Sandro?
Yes.
Ms. Kenny?
Yes.
Mr. Ryan?
Yes.
Mr. Smith?
Yes.
Ms. Weber?
Yes.
Dr. Zhang?
Yes.
Ms. Ciccarelli?
Yes.
Agenda items passed 9-0.
Okay, perfect. Policy, we don't have anything. Moving on to board business. Anything anybody wants to discuss in board business? Oh, yes. Okay,
Yes,
go ahead, Ms. Weber.
Susan, or no, I shouldn't ask you. On the calendar change on the curriculum item, how does that get communicated out that we're going to be off of school on Thursday, Friday before Memorial Day?
It's gone through all of the K-3 school offices. It's gone out through their, it will go out through their weekly updates. They will be well informed.
Okay, great. And you let the police and all those folks know that we don't need cross?
Yes.
Okay, great. Excellent. The other item is regarding, I just want to give the board an update on the Harding conversations. I think I mentioned it last week and the week before, but Ann, Bradley, and I met again with some delegates from the Harding group, so we continue with discussions. There's a lot of steps, as I mentioned the last time. There's agreements, there's contracts. The county has to approve it. So I just wanted to let you know we're still in discussions, sharpening the pens and working out some of the details on who's responsible for what. So that's ongoing. Hopefully, in the next few months, we should have a little bit more concrete information. And just to mention, they approached us. Libby, you asked, how did that come about? They were, I guess, looking to switch their arrangement with Madison. I have no idea why, and I think it was a fairly long arrangement that they've had, 25 years, I believe. But it would be, it's a nice revenue stream for us. That's, as our expenses go up and we paint this bleak picture, this will help with revenue. And as we said last meeting, multiple times, we hear Mr. Heap, you're giving up revenue. We hear the kindergarten parents, they were there, they're very angry. Why are you, balancing the budget on our back? That's why the tuition went from $7,000 to $5,000, so that we're not putting it on the whole of everybody's back. And whether it's this board or future boards, at some point, the goal is to get it to zero. It's a public school. Will we be able to do that? I don't know. Depends on the numbers, depends on how Bradley can work his magic.
Anytime soon.
Anytime soon. But Ann or Bradley, did you have anything that you want to add on that Harding meeting?
No, not in particular. I mean,
Not much. Just still trying to figure out what makes the most sense in terms of budget, and just, as you said, reiterate, it's revenue to the district that's coming in.
Right. And we have limited opportunity to generate revenue.
We have very limited revenue.
Right. This is kind of
Very
it.
limited opportunity, that's
Right.
correct.
Tuition is it.
Tuition is
And
it.
then unless we put a cell tower on the roof, which
Do that.
isn't, we looked into it, it doesn't pay. But thanks, Ann, that was.
yeah, and we'll continue to keep people updated as we have more information. But like Ms. Weber said, there's a lot of steps to go through. Ball's kind of in Madison's court, or Harding's court right now. They need to go through some, different things with the county and get it approved and all of those kinds of things. So until that happens, we don't really have any more information. So
Yep.
we
Thanks.
wait on them and we'll see what happens. and hopefully we can come to some sort of agreement. So that's that. Anything else for board business, anybody? No? Okay, perfect. Okay, we'll now have our second opportunity for public commentary. Anybody has anything else?
We don't have another executive session, right? We're done.
We do not.
For answering, what?
Oh, go ahead, start again.
Yep. Thanks for answering those questions. So Harding approached us, is what I gathered. We don't know why, is what I gathered. But did we ever ask them? Like, so we're just assuming that we're taking these high school kids on. This is what I'm gathering from what I heard. We're going to take them on. It's just a matter of negotiation as to what we're going to charge them. Is that right? I mean, it's a decision. It's just a matter of negotiation at this point. It's what it
Not
sounded like to
exactly.
me.
No, not exactly. I mean, there is, Dr. LaSusa, do you want to take that?
Yeah, well, I'll say, first of all, I've had other superintendents over the years that, this is my 12th year now, ask me whether we were in a position to consider taking on tuition students from their districts. Harding is not the only district in New Jersey that sends to a high school because they are only a K through 8 district. So now and then over the years, I've had these conversations. More often than not, I've told the superintendents, I'm sorry, I don't think we're in a position to do that. Once in a while, I've actually come back to finance committee of the board at the time and said, I just want you to know that this person was inquiring about this, but based on our enrollment and our, facilities right now, I don't think it's doable, and that was the end of the conversation. And back in, I don't remember, maybe a year ago, the Harding superintendent was during last school year, I believe, said to me, is this something that you might be in a position to do now that I know that your enrollment's gone down a little bit? And we discussed it informally, and I had continued conversations with him, and no decision has been made. The board hasn't voted to do this yet, but there have been conversations like Ms. Ciccarelli has said between representatives from the Harding board and representatives from the Chatham board to explore what it would look like, what it would mean for us in terms of our space needs, our student body, and most of the concerns or most of the considerations, I think it's fair to say that we have are of the financial variety and protecting the district against any extraordinary expenses that could arise. But recognizing that our enrollment has dropped by well over 100 students at Chatham High School in the past 3 years or 4 years, it's going to drop another 20 to 30 students over the next 5 or 6 years. We know that we have space availability for certain in our high school, and if we were able to establish another revenue stream, which is something that we have talked about on and off in all kinds of ways over the years, it could be beneficial to us in terms of budget sustainability. So I think that's kind of the roundabout picture right now.
Yeah.
Obviously, the board has not taken any type of formal resolution about, signing the contract. It's premature. We're not at the point where the attorneys have developed a formal agreement or Harding has attained any of the preliminary or any of the approvals that it requires from the state. But when we get to that point, then it will be before the board to do so.
Right, exactly.
All right. Thank you for that answer. So it sounds to me like it's because we've been approached before, our enrollment's down now, and we're looking for additional revenue streams. So now we're saying yes, but we don't know what our enrollment might be going forward. I know we have demographers reports and all of that, but with the new developments coming in to Chatham, we don't really know what that might be. We don't know the impact that might have on our facilities and our taxes. So I just feel like maybe it's a little premature, I don't know, you guys are in charge, but I just would hope you keep the public informed and involved, maybe have some open meetings about it. The other thing I just wanted to mention about full-day kindergarten is that I don't believe it's state mandated, so until it is, I don't know that it's something that the taxpayers should be obligated to pay for. It'd be a non-tuition based. And I also didn't hear an answer about whether the board would consider doing a special needs, mental health rather, I should say, presentation. There were 2 line items in the 3% tax increase. One was, I think, pharmaceutical costs for our teachers and maybe administration. That's increasing. And then the second one was, I misspoke before, not special education, but mental health issues. So I think it might be helpful for the public to understand what's driving that increased cost for certain mental health issues, ones that you can talk about. I also have a book that I would recommend that everyone on the board read. Dr. LaSousa, you probably know it already. It's called Bad Therapy, Why the Kids Aren't Growing Up by Abigail Schreier. It's a New York Times bestseller, and there are 6 chapters in the book that talk specifically about the benefits, maybe a few, but the downside or the cons to providing mental health services in a public school arena. So you might find it interesting. Bad Therapy by Abigail Schreier. Thanks.
We'll wrap it up. We do not have another executive session, correct? Okay. I'd like to close tonight's public session. Thank you for coming, and everybody get home safe.